The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the San Andreas depot, and Lily Lawson stepped down into the dusty California afternoon with nothing to her name but the worn leather trunk the driver hauled from the top of the coach. She stood there in the middle of the main street, her dark hair coming loose from its pins, her traveling dress wrinkled and stained with red dust, and wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. Behind her lay Philadelphia, and a broken engagement to a banker's son who had decided 3 weeks before the wedding that he preferred her younger sister. Ahead of her lay nothing but the wild promise of a teaching position in a gold country town she had never seen. The trunk landed with a thud at her feet, and the driver tipped his hat before climbing back up to his seat. Lily looked around at the rough wooden buildings lining the street, at the horses tied to hitching posts, at the men who had stopped to stare at the new arrival. San Andreas in the summer of 1878 was not the genteel town she had imagined from the letter of hire. It was raw and unfinished, a place carved out of the Sierra Nevada foothills by determination and gold fever. She bent to grasp the trunk's handle, but her gloved hands could barely budge it. Everything she owned was packed inside that trunk, every dress and book and memory she had been willing to carry west. She tugged again, managing to drag it a few inches before her arms protested. "Need some help with that." Lily straightened and found herself looking up at a man who had to be at least 6 feet tall, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of summer grass. He wore dusty jeans, scuffed boots, and a worn shirt with the sleeves rolled up over muscled forearms. A cowboy hat shaded his face, but she could see the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I can manage," she said. Though they both knew it was not true, he tilted his head, studying her with an expression that was more curious than mocking. "That trunk's half your size." "Where you headed? The boarding house, I suppose. I am the new schoolteacher. We have been waiting for you. Miss Hendricks wrote that you would arrive this week." He reached down and lifted the trunk as if it weighed nothing at all. "I am Garrett Irving. My ranch is a few miles outside town, but I come in for supplies most weeks." "Lily Lawson," she said, falling into step beside him as he started down the boardwalk. "Thank you for your assistance." "Not much in that trunk," he observed. "Feels like you packed light." She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "It contains everything I need." He glanced down at her, and something in his expression softened. "That is all I need too. A fresh start does not require much baggage." They walked in silence for a moment, the wooden boards creaking under their feet. Lily was acutely aware of the curious stares from the people they passed, and of the man beside her, who moved with the easy confidence of someone completely at home in his skin. He smelled like leather and sage, and something else she could not quite name, something wild and open. "Is it always this warm?" she asked, fanning herself with one hand. "This is mild for July. Wait until August." He smiled at her alarmed expression. "You will get used to it. The evenings cool down nice, and there is usually a breeze coming down from the mountains." The boarding house turned out to be a 2-story structure with a wide front porch and flower boxes in the windows. A woman in her 50s emerged as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "You must be Miss Lawson." "Oh, how wonderful. I am Martha Hendricks. I run the boarding house and the general store next door." She beamed at Lily, then noticed Garrett. "I see you have already met our Mr. Irving, one of the few respectable bachelors we have in these parts." Garrett set the trunk down on the porch with a gentle thud. "I will let you ladies get acquainted. Miss Lawson, welcome to San Andreas." "Thank you again, Mr. Irving." He touched the brim of his hat and walked away, his long stride eating up the distance back toward the main street. Lily found herself watching him go until Martha's cheerful voice pulled her attention back. "Come inside, dear. You must be exhausted from your journey. Let me show you to your room and then we can discuss the school arrangements." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the back garden. Garrett had carried her trunk upstairs and left it at the foot of the bed. Lily sank down onto the quilt and allowed herself a moment of doubt. What was she doing here? Thousands of miles from everything she had ever known. But then she remembered her sister's apologetic face, her former fiancé's relieved expression when she had released him from their engagement, her mother's disappointment that Lily had refused to simply accept the situation and attend the wedding as if nothing had happened. No, she had made the right choice. This was her chance to build a life on her own terms. She unpacked slowly, hanging her few dresses in the small wardrobe and arranging her books on the windowsill. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in a shawl, was the music box her grandmother had given her. Lily wound it carefully and let the tinkling melody fill the room. It was a piece of home, a reminder that she had not always been so alone. Dinner that evening was served in the boarding house dining room, where Lily met the other residents. There was Mr. Chen, who ran the laundry, the Reverend Thompson and his wife, two miners named Jake and Samuel who were brothers, and a widowed seamstress named Mrs. Patterson. They welcomed her kindly, asking polite questions about her journey and her plans for the school. "There are about 20 children of school age in town and the surrounding ranches," Mrs. Thompson explained. "Some of them have had sporadic schooling, but many have had none at all. You will have your work cut out for you." "When do I begin?" "School starts the Monday after next." "That gives you a little over a week to settle in and prepare." Martha passed her a bowl of potatoes. "The schoolhouse is just down the street. I will show you tomorrow." That night, Lily lay in her narrow bed and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the California night. Somewhere a dog barked, and she could hear the distant sound of piano music from one of the saloons. The air coming through her window was warm and carried the scent of dust and pine. She thought about Garrett Irving and the way he had looked at her trunk, and said that was all he needed too. There had been something in his voice, a recognition of shared experience, that made her wonder what fresh start he had come here seeking. The next morning, Martha showed her the schoolhouse, a simple one-room building with rough wooden benches and a desk at the front. There were slates and a few battered textbooks and a blackboard that had seen better days. "It is not much," Martha said apologetically, "but the town is growing. We hope to build a better school in a few years." "It will do nicely," Lily said, already imagining how she would arrange the students and plan her lessons. "I have worked with less." She spent the rest of the week preparing, cleaning the schoolhouse until it gleamed, organizing the supplies and planning her curriculum. On Saturday morning, she walked to the general store to purchase paper and ink and found Garrett Irving inside, loading supplies into a wooden crate. "Miss Lawson," he said, touching his hat. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you. I have been preparing for school to start." "The children will be glad to have a real teacher. We have been making do with whoever had time to teach them their letters." He picked up a bag of flour and added it to his crate. "Are you finding everything you need?" "Yes, Mrs. Hendricks has been very kind." He hesitated, then said, "I know you are busy getting ready for school, but if you wanted to see something of the area, I would be happy to show you around. There is a nice spot by the creek where it is cooler, and the wildflowers are still blooming." Lily felt a flutter of something in her chest. It had been so long since a man had looked at her with genuine interest, without calculation or expectation. "That sounds lovely. When?" "Tomorrow afternoon. I could pick you up at the boarding house after church." "I would like that very much." His smile transformed his face, making him look younger and less guarded. "Good. I will see you then." Sunday morning, Lily attended services at the small white church at the edge of town. The congregation was a mixture of townspeople and ranchers, miners and merchants. She noticed Garrett sitting near the back, his hat on the pew beside him. He caught her eye and nodded, and she felt that flutter again. After the service, he was waiting by a wagon hitched to two sturdy horses. He had changed into clean clothes, and his dark hair was still damp, as if he had dunked his head in water before coming to fetch her. "Ready?" he asked, helping her up onto the wagon seat. "Where are we going? A place I like. It is not far." They drove out of town, following a rutted road that wound through the foothills. The landscape was golden and dry, studded with oak trees and outcroppings of gray rock. In the distance, the mountains rose up, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer heat. "Tell me about your ranch," Lily said, holding onto her hat as the wagon bounced over a rough patch. "I have 160 acres, run cattle mostly and some horses. I built the house myself 3 years ago when I first came here." He glanced at her. "It is not fancy, but it is mine." "Where did you come from?" "Texas originally. My family had a ranch there, but after the war things got complicated. My father died and my older brother took over. We did not see eye to eye on how things should be run, so I sold him my share and came west. That must have been difficult." He shrugged. "Sometimes you have to leave things behind to find where you really belong. What about you? What brought you all the way from Philadelphia with nothing but a worn trunk?" Lily looked down at her hands. "A broken engagement. My fiancé fell in love with my younger sister." "His loss," Garrett said simply. She looked up, startled by the directness of his response. "You do not even know me." "I know you were brave enough to come all the way out here alone. I know you did not fall apart when you realized San Andreas was not some fancy eastern town. And I know you are trying to make the best of things, even though I saw the doubt in your eyes when you first arrived." He smiled at her. "That tells me plenty." They rounded a bend, and the landscape opened up to reveal a meadow along a creek. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and the banks were thick with wildflowers, purple and yellow and white. Garrett pulled the wagon to a stop under the shade of a massive oak tree. "This is beautiful," Lily breathed. "I thought you might like it." He jumped down and came around to help her from the wagon. His hands were warm on her waist as he lifted her down, and for a moment they stood close together, their eyes meeting. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said softly. "My pleasure." He reached into the back of the wagon and pulled out a basket. "I brought lunch. I hope you do not mind. I had Martha pack it this morning." They spread a blanket under the oak tree and unpacked the basket. There were sandwiches, cheese, fresh bread, apples, and cookies. Lily realized she was hungrier than she had thought. "This is wonderful," she said, biting into an apple. "I did not know cowboys could be so thoughtful." "Most cowboys would have just brought jerky and whiskey," he admitted, "but I wanted to make a good impression." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Garrett leaned back on his elbows, looking up through the oak leaves at the sky. "Because I have not met anyone like you before. Most women who come out here are following their husbands or fathers. You came on your own, knowing what you were leaving behind and not knowing what you would find. That takes courage." He turned his head to look at her. "And because when I saw you standing there with that trunk, looking lost and determined at the same time, I thought you might understand what it is like to start over." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. "I do. I was so afraid when I got off that stagecoach. I kept thinking I had made a terrible mistake. And now I think maybe it was the best decision I ever made." They talked for hours, sitting by the creek in the dappled shade. Garrett told her about building his ranch, about the hard winters and the dry summers, about the satisfaction of watching his cattle herd grow. Lily told him about teaching in a small school in Philadelphia, about her love of books and learning, about the way the world had seemed to collapse when her engagement ended. "You know what the worst part was," she said, picking at the grass beside the blanket. "Not losing him, but realizing I had never really loved him. I had just been following the path that was expected of me. When it all fell apart, I felt relieved, and that made me feel guilty." "You should not feel guilty for wanting more than a life mapped out by someone else," Garrett said. "That is not selfish. That is honest." The sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon when they finally packed up the basket and blanket. On the drive back to town, Lily felt more at peace than she had in months. Garrett drove with one hand on the reins, the other resting on his thigh, and she found herself watching his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. "Can I see you again?" he asked as they pulled up in front of the boarding house. "I would like that." "How about Friday evening? There is a dance at the town hall, nothing fancy, but it is a chance for folks to get together. I am not sure I have anything appropriate to wear. Wear what you have. No one will care." He helped her down from the wagon. "Besides, you would look beautiful in a flour sack." Lily laughed, feeling her cheeks warm. "That is quite the compliment. It is the truth." He held her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Good night, Miss Lawson." "Good night, Mr. Irving, and thank you for a wonderful afternoon." She watched him drive away, then turned to find Martha standing in the doorway with a knowing smile. "He is a good man," Martha said. "One of the best. We are just getting to know each other." "Of course you are, dear, but I have seen the way he looks at you and the way you look at him. Sometimes these things do not take long." Lily wanted to protest, but she could not deny the truth of Martha's words. She had felt more in those few hours with Garrett than she had in 2 years with her former fiancé. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The week passed quickly. School began on Monday, and Lily found herself facing 20 children ranging in age from 5 to 14. They were a rough and tumble group, sunburned and skeptical, but she won them over with patience and genuine interest in their lives. She learned that Tommy's father was a miner, that Sarah helped her mother run the bakery, that Miguel's family had been in California since before it was part of the United States. On Friday, she finished school early and hurried back to the boarding house to prepare for the dance. She had only one good dress that was not completely worn out, a deep blue cotton with white trim. It was simple, but it fit well, and when she pinned up her hair and pinched her cheeks for color, she thought she looked presentable. Garrett arrived at 6, freshly shaved and wearing a clean shirt and vest. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said, and she could tell he meant it. "Thank you. You look very handsome yourself." The town hall was already crowded when they arrived. Someone had brought a fiddle, another a guitar, and the musicians were tuning up in the corner. Long tables held food brought by the townspeople, and lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over everything. Garrett led her to the dance floor as the music started, a lively reel that had everyone clapping and stomping. He was a good dancer, moving with the same easy confidence he brought to everything else. Lily found herself laughing as he swung her around, her skirts whirling. They danced until they were breathless, then stepped outside for some air. The night was clear and cool, the stars brilliant overhead. "I am so glad I met you," Lily said, leaning against the railing of the porch. "I am glad you came to San Andreas." Garrett stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I know we have not known each other long, but I feel like I have been waiting for you." She turned to face him. "I feel the same way. It is strange, is it not, how quickly things can change? Not strange. Right?" He reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "Can I kiss you?" Yes, she whispered. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, then deeper, and she felt as if she were falling and flying at the same time. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and she melted into him. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I have wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," Garrett admitted. "I am very glad you did." They stayed outside for a while longer, talking quietly and stealing more kisses, until Martha came looking for Lily. "It is getting late, dear. People will talk if you stay out here much longer." Reluctantly, Lily went inside to gather her shawl. Garrett walked her back to the boarding house, holding her hand the entire way. "When can I see you again?" he asked at the door. "Tomorrow. You could come for lunch. I will be here." He kissed her again, softly this time, then waited until she was safely inside before walking back to where he had left his horse. Lily leaned against the closed door, her heart racing. She had come to San Andreas expecting nothing but a job and a chance to start over. She had not expected to find Garrett, with his kind eyes and strong hands, and the way he made her feel truly seen for the first time in her life. The summer days fell into a pattern. Lily taught during the week, pouring her energy into her students and watching them blossom under her attention. In the evenings and on weekends, she spent every possible moment with Garrett. He showed her the ranch, the house he had built with his own hands, the cattle grazing in the Golden Hills. She met his ranch hands, a grizzled old man named Pete and a young Mexican cowboy named Carlos, both of whom clearly adored their boss. "He is a fair man," Pete told her one afternoon when Garrett had ridden out to check on a fence. "Works harder than any of us, never asks us to do something he would not do himself. You could do worse, miss." "I know," Lily said, watching Garrett in the distance, sitting tall in the saddle. One Saturday in August, Garrett took her fishing at a secluded spot along the creek. They sat on the bank with their feet dangling in the cool water, and Lily tried not to laugh as Garrett showed her how to bait a hook. "I am not sure I can do this," she said, eyeing the wriggling worm. "Sure you can. You faced down a room full of rowdy students on your first day. This is nothing." She managed to get the worm on the hook and cast her line into the water, feeling absurdly proud of herself. "Now we wait," Garrett said, settling back against a rock. "How long? As long as it takes. Fishing is about patience." They sat in comfortable silence, the only sounds the burble of the creek and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Lily felt utterly content, more so than she could ever remember feeling. "I love you," she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could think better of them. Garrett turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "Say that again. I love you. I know it is too soon and you probably think I am crazy, but I do. I love you." A slow smile spread across his face. "I love you too. I have been trying to find the right time to tell you, but you beat me to it. Really, really." He set down his fishing rod and pulled her into his arms. "I love everything about you, Lily. Your courage, your kindness, the way you look at the world like it is full of possibilities. I love how you are with the children and how you are not afraid to get your hands dirty. I love the way you laugh and the way you think." He kissed her forehead. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Lily pulled back to look at him. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "Not yet. I want to do it properly with a ring and everything. But I am telling you that I intend to ask, and soon, if you think you might say yes." "I know I will say yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Whenever you ask, the answer will be yes." They spent the rest of the afternoon kissing and planning their future, the fish completely forgotten. By the time they returned to town, Lily was glowing with happiness. Garrett proposed 2 weeks later, on a Sunday evening after church. He took her back to the meadow where they had first picnicked and got down on one knee in the wildflowers. "Lily Lawson, you arrived in San Andreas with nothing but a worn trunk, but you brought everything I needed into my life. Will you marry me?" He opened a small box to reveal a simple gold band with a small ruby set in it. It was not the large diamond her former fiancé had given her, but it was infinitely more precious. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, yes, yes." They were married in October, when the heat had finally broken and the leaves were turning gold on the hillsides. The whole town turned out for the wedding, which was held in the little white church. Lily wore a new dress that Mrs. Patterson had made for her, pale cream with lace at the collar and cuffs. Garrett wore his best suit, his hair slicked back, his eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. Reverend Thompson performed the ceremony, and when Garrett kissed her, everyone cheered. At the reception in the town hall, they danced and ate cake and accepted the congratulations of their friends and neighbors. Martha cried happy tears and hugged them both. "I knew from the first moment," she said. "You were meant for each other." That night, Garrett carried Lily over the threshold of the ranch house that was now her home. He set her down gently in the main room, which glowed with lamplight. "Welcome home, Mrs. Irving. It feels strange to be called that. Good strange." He pulled her into his arms. "I promise to spend every day trying to make you happy. You already do, just by being yourself." Their first months of marriage were a time of adjustment and discovery. Lily continued teaching, rising early to make breakfast for Garrett and the ranch hands before walking to town. She came home in the afternoons to help with the ranch work, learning to cook for a crew, to tend the kitchen garden, to manage the household accounts. It was harder work than she had ever done, but she found satisfaction in it. Garrett was an attentive husband, always finding small ways to show his love. He brought her wildflowers, fixed things before she noticed they were broken, and held her close at night while they talked about their days. They were building a life together, piece by piece. In December, Lily realized she was pregnant. She told Garrett one evening as they sat by the fire, his arm around her shoulders, "I think I am going to have a baby." He went very still. "Are you sure?" "Fairly sure. I have not had my monthly courses in 2 months, and I have been feeling sick in the mornings." He turned her to face him, his eyes searching hers. "How do you feel about this?" "Terrified, excited, happy," she smiled. "How do you feel?" "The same, all of those things." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A baby, our baby. Are you ready to be a father?" "I do not know if anyone is ever ready, but I want this. I want a family with you." They told the others at the ranch the next day, and Pete and Carlos were delighted, already making plans to build a cradle and baby-proof the house. In town, the news was met with equal joy. The students drew pictures for the baby, and the women of the town showered Lily with advice and offers of help. As winter gave way to spring, Lily's belly grew. She stopped teaching at the end of March when the walk to town became too tiring, and spent her days preparing for the baby. Martha came out to the ranch often, bringing supplies and companionship. Mrs. Thompson taught Lily how to make baby clothes, and Mrs. Patterson sewed tiny gowns and blankets. Garrett was wonderfully attentive, treating Lily as if she were made of glass. She had to remind him constantly that she was not sick, just pregnant. "I am worried about you," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "What if something goes wrong?" "It will not. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. But this is my baby. And you are my wife. I cannot bear the thought of losing you." She took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was kicking vigorously. "Feel that. That is a strong, healthy baby who is eager to meet us, and I am strong too. I will be fine." The baby came on a warm May morning, just as the sun was rising over the mountains. The labor was long and difficult, with Martha and Mrs. Thompson attending. Garrett paced the main room, wearing a path in the floorboards, until Pete finally made him go outside and chop wood to work off his nervous energy. When the baby's first cry rang out, Garrett dropped the axe and ran into the house. He found Lily propped up against the pillows, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "We have a son," she said softly. "Come meet him." Garrett approached as if in a dream, his eyes fixed on the impossibly small person in Lily's arms. The baby had a wisp of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face, and was the most beautiful thing Garrett had ever seen. "Can I hold him?" Lily carefully transferred the baby to Garrett's arms. He held his son with exquisite gentleness, tears streaming down his face. "Hello, little one. I am your father. I am going to do my very best for you." They named him William after Garrett's father and called him Will. He was a good baby with Garrett's green eyes and Lily's dark hair. Garrett was besotted, spending every free moment holding and playing with his son. He made Pete and Carlos admire the baby daily, and anyone who came to the ranch was subjected to a proud father's enthusiastic descriptions of Will's development. Lily had never seen Garrett so happy. Watching him with their son, she fell in love with him all over again. He was patient and gentle, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with Will when he cried at night, singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. "You are a natural father," she told him one evening as they stood over the cradle watching Will sleep. "I always wanted to be a father, but I never imagined it could be like this, that I could love someone so much it actually hurts. I know exactly what you mean." Life settled into a new rhythm. Lily did not return to teaching that fall, choosing instead to stay home with Will. She missed the classroom, but she did not regret her decision. These early months were precious, watching Will grow and change every day. Garrett hired a woman from town, Mrs. Chen's daughter Rose, to help with the housework, which gave Lily more time to enjoy her son. The ranch prospered. Garrett's herd grew, and he began breeding horses as well, developing a reputation for quality stock. Money was not plentiful, but there was always enough. They were not rich in material things, but they had everything that mattered. When Will was a year old, Lily realized she was pregnant again. This time the news was met with calm joy rather than panic. They knew what to expect, and they were ready. Their daughter was born in March of 1881, a beautiful baby girl with blonde hair and blue eyes that eventually turned to match Lily's brown ones. They named her Grace, and she completed their family. Will was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything. Garrett had to be called in from the fields constantly to admire some new thing Grace had done. The years passed in a golden blur of happiness. Will grew into a sturdy boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to ride and rope and care for the animals. Grace was a whirlwind of energy, fearless and curious, climbing trees and demanding to do everything her brother did. Lily taught them to read and write, using the skills she had honed in the classroom, and Garrett taught them about the land and the animals and the value of hard work. In 1883, San Andreas decided to build a new, larger school, and the town council asked Lily if she would consider returning to teach. Will was 6 and Grace was 2, and Lily felt ready to return to the work she loved. She arranged for Rose to watch Grace during school hours, and Will attended as one of her students, which he found both exciting and embarrassing in equal measure. Garrett supported her decision completely. "You have too much to offer to keep it to yourself. The children of this town need you." So Lily returned to teaching and found that she had not lost her touch. If anything, Being a mother had made her a better teacher, more patient and understanding. She taught her students not just reading and arithmetic, but also about curiosity and kindness, and the importance of following their dreams. In the evenings, she would return to the ranch and slip back into her role as wife and mother, helping with dinner, playing with the children, sitting with Garrett on the porch as the sun set. They talked about everything and nothing, still finding new things to learn about each other after years of marriage. "You ever regret it?" Garrett asked her one evening. "Leaving Philadelphia, giving up the life you could have had?" "Never, not for a single moment." She took his hand. "That life was never really mine. This is where I belong. Even when the wind howls and the snow piles up and you have to break ice in the wash basin, especially then, because you are here and the children are here and this is home." The children grew. Will turned into a serious, responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Grace was bright and spirited, with a quick mind and a gift for languages that she inherited from her mother. In the evenings, Lily taught her French and Spanish, while Will learned from Carlos how to manage cattle and horses. In 1885, when Will was 8 and Grace was 4, Lily gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Henry and Hope. The ranch house suddenly felt very full, but it was a good kind of chaos. Will helped with the babies, and even Grace, young as she was, liked to fetch diapers and sing to them. Garrett hired more ranch hands to help manage the growing operation, and built an addition onto the house to accommodate their expanding family. The ranch was thriving, their children were healthy, and Lily had her teaching. They had built something real and lasting out of nothing but determination and love. One afternoon in the spring of 1886, Lily stood in the schoolhouse watching her students work on their lessons. Through the window, she could see the mountains still capped with snow, and beyond them the endless sky. She thought about that day 8 years ago when she had stepped off the stagecoach with nothing but a worn trunk and a heart full of hope and fear. She had been so lost then, running from one life without knowing what she was running toward. And then Garrett had appeared, offering to help with her trunk, offering his own story of starting over. "That is all I need to," he had said, and in those simple words she had found a kindred spirit. That evening she told him what she had been thinking. "You know what I realized today? That the best things in life cannot be packed in a trunk. Love, family, home, they are not things you carry with you. They are things you build." Garrett pulled her close. "We built something good, did we not? We built something extraordinary." The years continued to unfold, each one bringing new challenges and joys. Will, at 15, was nearly as tall as his father and could work a full day alongside the ranch hands. Grace, at 11, had decided she wanted to be a teacher like her mother and spent hours helping Lily prepare lessons. The twins were rambunctious 7-year-olds, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1890, a drought struck the region. The creeks ran dry, the grass turned brown and brittle, and cattle prices plummeted. It was the hardest year Garrett and Lily had faced since they married. They had to sell off part of the herd, and Lily took on extra sewing work to help make ends meet. The children went without new clothes, and meals became simpler, but they made it through together. Garrett never complained, working longer hours, trying new methods to conserve water and protect the remaining cattle. Lily economized without making the children feel deprived, turning scarcity into adventure. They had picnics using whatever food was available, and played games that cost nothing but imagination. One night after the children were asleep, Lily found Garrett sitting on the porch steps, his head in his hands. "We are going to be all right," she said, sitting down beside him. "I should have saved more, should have been better prepared. No one could have predicted this drought." We are doing everything we can. You deserve better than this. You and the children." She took his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me, Garrett Irving. I have everything I need. I have you and our children and this ranch. We will get through this, just like we have gotten through everything else. How are you always so strong? Because you give me strength. Because we are partners in good times and bad." She kissed him softly. "I married you with nothing but a worn trunk, remember? Things have never mattered to me. You are what matters." The drought finally broke in the fall, with torrential rains that filled the creeks and turned the hills green again. It took another year to rebuild the herd, but they managed it. And the experience had taught the children valuable lessons about resilience and the importance of family. In 1892, Will announced that he wanted to go to agricultural college to learn modern ranching methods. Garrett was proud but worried about the expense. Lily, however, was adamant. "We will find a way. Education is important." They scrimped and saved, and Will left for college that fall, the first in either of their families to receive higher education. Grace, at 14, had become Lily's unofficial teaching assistant, helping the younger students with their reading. The twins were 10 and already showing distinct personalities. Henry was quiet and thoughtful, always reading. Hope was adventurous, spending every free moment on horseback. Lily watched her children growing into themselves and felt a deep satisfaction. She and Garrett had given them roots and wings, a solid foundation and the freedom to soar. In 1895, Will graduated from college and returned to the ranch full of new ideas. He and Garrett worked together to implement better breeding programs and more efficient methods of managing the land. The ranch flourished under their combined efforts, growing larger and more prosperous than Garrett had ever imagined possible. Grace, at 17, announced that she was going to attend normal school to become a certified teacher. Lily could not have been more proud. The twins were 13, and Henry had started writing poetry while Hope talked about becoming a horse trainer. One evening that summer, Garrett and Lily rode out to the meadow by the creek where he had first taken her all those years ago. The wildflowers were blooming, and the air was sweet with the scent of sage. "You remember that first picnic?" Garrett asked as they sat on the bank. "I remember everything. I remember thinking you were the most handsome man I had ever seen. I remember feeling like maybe I had not made a mistake after all. I remember thinking that I would marry you someday and wondering if you would ever feel the same way. It did not take long, did it? No, when you know, you know." He laced his fingers through hers. "We have built a good life, Lily, better than I ever dreamed possible. We built it together. That is what makes it good." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains, secure in the love they had built and the family they had created. In 1897, Will married a girl from town, a rancher's daughter named Emily. They built a house on the far end of the property and started their own family. Grace finished normal school and took a teaching position in Sacramento, though she came home often to visit. The twins were 15 and navigating the complicated waters of adolescence. Lily was 41 now, with threads of silver in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Garrett was 43, his body showing the effects of years of hard work but still strong and capable. They had been married for 18 years, and Lily loved him more with each passing day. One afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, Garrett suddenly stopped and leaned on his shovel. "I have been thinking," he said. "We should take a trip, just the two of us. The twins are old enough to stay with Will and Emily for a few days. Where would we go? Anywhere you want, maybe to the coast. You have never seen the Pacific Ocean." Lily straightened, pushing her hair back from her face. "I would like that. It has been so long since we have had time just for us." They made the trip in September, taking the train to San Francisco and then traveling down the coast. Lily stood on the beach with the wind whipping her skirts, watching the waves crash against the rocks, and felt tears stream down her face. "What is wrong?" Garrett asked, alarmed. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. I am just so happy." She turned to him. "Thank you for this, for everything, for seeing me that day in San Andreas and deciding I was worth the effort. You were never effort, Lily. You were always a gift." They spent 3 days by the ocean, walking the beaches, eating fresh seafood, and sleeping late in a little inn overlooking the water. It was like a second honeymoon, a chance to reconnect as the people they had been before they became parents and ranchers and all the other roles they played. On the last day, as they stood watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Garrett said, "I would do it all again. Every hard day, every challenge, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it to have this life with you." "So would I, 1,000 times over." They returned to the ranch refreshed and recommitted to each other. The children teased them about acting like newlyweds, but Lily did not care. She had learned long ago that love was not something that faded with time if you tended it properly. It grew deeper and richer, like good soil that produced better crops with each season. The turn of the century brought changes. Henry left to attend university in San Francisco, determined to become a writer. Hope stayed on the ranch, working with her father and brother to train horses. Grace got engaged to a teacher she had met in Sacramento, and Will and Emily had their third child, a daughter they named Lily in honor of her grandmother. Lily, watching her grandchildren play in the yard where her own children had played, felt the weight of years and the lightness of joy in equal measure. She was 50 years old, and her life had turned out nothing like she had planned, but infinitely better than she had imagined. In 1903, on their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Will and Emily brought their children. Grace came with her husband Thomas. Henry took time off from his newspaper job in the city. Hope, who still lived at home, organized everything with Martha's help. The party was held in the meadow by the creek, the same place where Garrett had first brought Lily all those years ago. Tables groaned under the weight of food, and lanterns hung from the trees. The whole town seemed to be there, celebrating the couple who had become pillars of the community. As the sun set, Garrett pulled Lily onto the makeshift dance floor. The fiddler played a waltz, and they moved together with the ease of long practice. 25 years, Garrett murmured. "Where did the time go? Into every one of these people," Lily said, looking around at their children and grandchildren, their friends and neighbors. "We spent it well." "That we did." He pulled her closer. "I love you just as much now as I did the day I married you, more even." "I love you more too. I did not think that was possible, but every year I discover new depths." They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by the life they had built together. Later, after the guests had gone home and the children had gone to bed, they walked hand in hand through the ranch, visiting the barn and the corrals, the garden and the creek. "You ever think about that day you arrived?" Garrett asked. "Standing there with your trunk, looking so lost." "I think about it often. I was terrified. Everything I had known was behind me, and I had no idea what lay ahead. And now I know that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. That trunk I arrived with is still in our attic, gathering dust. But everything important, everything that gives my life meaning, I found here. With you." They stood together in the moonlight, two people who had started with nothing and built everything that mattered. The ranch spread out around them, the house glowing with lamplight, the sound of the creek a gentle music in the darkness. "That is all I need to," Garrett said softly, echoing the words he had spoken so long ago. You are all I need." "And you are all I need," Lily replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Forever." The years that followed were gentler, a time of grandchildren and quiet satisfaction. Garrett and Lily spent their days working the ranch at a more relaxed pace, with Will taking over more of the heavy labor. They took pleasure in small things: morning coffee on the porch, evening walks to the creek, Sunday dinners with the whole family gathered around their table. In 1908, Lily retired from teaching at age 57. The town held a celebration in her honor, and former students came from all over California to thank her for the education and encouragement she had given them. It was a bittersweet day, leaving work that had been so important to her, but she was ready to rest. Garrett was 61 now, still strong but moving more slowly. He let Will and Hope handle most of the ranch work, spending his time with Lily and the grandchildren who seemed to multiply every year. They had 8 now, ranging from toddlers to teenagers, and each one held a special place in their hearts. One autumn afternoon in 1910, Lily found an old trunk in the attic while looking for some quilts. It was her trunk, the one she had arrived with 32 years ago. She sat down beside it, running her hands over the worn leather, and felt a rush of memory. She opened it carefully. Inside were the few dresses she had brought with her, hopelessly out of fashion now. There were books, their pages yellowed with age. At the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was her grandmother's music box. She wound it carefully, and the familiar melody filled the dusty attic. Garrett found her there, sitting beside the trunk with tears streaming down her face. "What is wrong?" he asked, lowering himself to sit beside her. "Nothing is wrong. I just found my old trunk, the one I had when I arrived." He looked at it, then at her. "That is where you kept everything you owned. It seemed like so much then. Now it seems like so little. A few dresses, some books, a music box. That was my entire life. And look what you turned it into." He gestured around them, though they could not see through the ceiling and walls. "A home, a family, a legacy. You took what you had and multiplied it 100-fold. We did, together." They sat there for a long time, listening to the music box wind down, remembering all the years between that frightened girl with her worn trunk and the contented woman she had become. In 1912, Garrett and Lily celebrated their 35th anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, just the two of them. The children had offered to throw another big party, but they had declined. "We have had our celebrations," Garrett said. "Now I just want time with you." They cooked dinner together, something they rarely did anymore, with Hope and her husband living at the ranch house and doing most of the cooking. It was a simple meal, steak and potatoes and green beans from the garden, but it tasted perfect. After dinner, they sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "You have any regrets?" Lily asked. "About anything?" Garrett thought for a long time. "I regret that we cannot have more time. I regret that we are getting old and our bodies do not work as well as they used to. But I do not regret a single choice I made, not one day we spent together. This has been a good life, Lily. The very best life." "Yes," she agreed, taking his hand. "The very best." They sat in silence as the stars came out, each lost in their own memories but bound together by a love that had only grown stronger with time. They had started with nothing but a worn trunk and a willingness to try, and they had built a life that was rich beyond measure. The seasons turned. Winters came and went, each one a little harder to endure. Springs brought new calves and foals, the continuation of the ranch's legacy. Summers were for family gatherings and watching the grandchildren play in the creek. Autumns were for harvest and preparation, for storing up against the cold to come. In 1915, Garrett fell ill with pneumonia. Lily nursed him through it, sitting by his bedside for days, refusing to leave his side. The children came, worried faces hovering in the doorway, but Lily would not let them count their father out. "He is strong," she told them. "He will pull through." And he did, though it took weeks for him to recover fully. When he was finally able to sit up and take solid food again, he looked at Lily with wonder. "You would not let me go." "Of course not. We made a deal when we got married. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, I'm not done with you yet." He took her hand, his grip still weak but determined. "I love you more than life itself. I know, and I love you the same way." He recovered slowly, but he was never quite as strong again. Lily adjusted their lives accordingly, taking on tasks he could no longer manage, protecting him without making him feel diminished. It was a delicate balance, but she had had years of practice in understanding what he needed. In the spring of 1917, they celebrated their 40th anniversary. This time they did allow the children to throw a party, held at Will and Emily's house since Garrett was not up to traveling. The whole family was there, children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren now. Grace came from Sacramento with her family. Henry brought his wife and children from San Francisco. Hope and her family were there, of course, and Will and Emily hosted. Lily looked around at the gathered family and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. All of this had grown from that one moment when she stepped off a stagecoach with a worn trunk, and Garrett had offered to help her carry it. "What are you thinking about?" Garrett asked, sitting beside her in the place of honor. "About how one small act of kindness can change everything. If you had not helped me with my trunk that day, none of this would exist. I think we were meant to find each other. If it had not been the trunk, it would have been something else." "You really believe that?" "I do. Some things are meant to be." Later that evening, when most of the guests had gone home and just the immediate family remained, Will stood up to make a toast. "To my parents, who taught us everything that matters. How to work hard, how to love deeply, how to face hardship without losing hope. You started with nothing and built all of this." He gestured around the room. "Every person here exists because you two found each other and chose to build a life together. That is your legacy, and it is extraordinary." Everyone raised their glasses, and Lily saw tears on many faces, including her own. She looked at Garrett and saw that he was crying too. "We did all right, did we not?" he whispered. "We did better than all right. We did magnificently." The years became more precious as they became fewer. Garrett moved more slowly now, and Lily's own energy was not what it had been. But they still made time for their evening walks, even if they did not go as far. They still sat on the porch together, holding hands and watching the sunset. They still shared a bed every night, still reached for each other in the darkness. In the fall of 1920, Garrett fell asleep one afternoon in his chair on the porch and simply did not wake up. He went peacefully, with no pain or struggle, just a gentle slipping away. Lily found him there when she came out with his coffee, his face serene in the slanting autumn light. The grief was crushing. For 43 years, Garrett had been her partner, her best friend, her great love. The world without him seemed impossibly empty, but Lily was not alone. Her children surrounded her, taking turns staying at the ranch, making sure she ate and slept and did not drown in her sorrow. "Tell us about when you met," Grace said one evening, sitting with her mother in the gathering dusk. "I know the story, but I want to hear it again." So Lily told her, and in the telling, she found a measure of comfort. She spoke of that frightened girl stepping off the stagecoach, of the tall cowboy who had offered to help, of the immediate connection they had felt. "He said that is all I need too," Lily finished. "He understood that I was starting over, that everything I owned was in that trunk, and he told me that was enough, that we did not need much to build something good, And he was right. We built something extraordinary out of almost nothing. You did, Grace agreed, crying. You gave us everything. Lily lived for 7 more years after Garrett died. She stayed on the ranch, cared for by her children, surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She spent her days working in the garden, reading and writing letters. She recorded the stories of her life with Garrett, wanting the future generations to know where they came from and how much love went into building their family. On a warm May morning in 1927, Lily died quietly in her sleep, in the bed she had shared with Garrett for so many years. She was 76 years old, and she had lived a full and rich life. The family buried her next to Garrett in the small cemetery outside San Andreas, under the oak trees with a view of the mountains. The headstone they chose was simple: Lily Lawson Irving, 1851–1927, beloved wife, mother, teacher. But her real legacy was not carved in stone. It lived in the ranch that still thrived under Will's management, in the school in Sacramento where Grace was now principal, in the books that Henry had written, in the horse training program that Hope had built into a renowned operation. It lived in the dozens of descendants who carried her genes and Garrett's, who had inherited their work ethic and their capacity for love. And it lived in the story that was passed down through the generations, of how a frightened young woman had arrived in San Andreas with nothing but a worn trunk, and how a kind cowboy had said that was all he needed too. How they had taken that small beginning and built a love that lasted a lifetime, a family that spanned generations, a legacy that would endure. It was proof that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness lead to the greatest blessings, that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters, and that true wealth is not measured in gold or land, but in love shared and lives lived well together. The worn trunk stayed in the family, passed down as a reminder of humble beginnings and extraordinary outcomes. Each generation told the story to the next, keeping alive the memory of Garrett and Lily, and the beautiful life they built from nothing but courage, hope, and love.